Parshas Mishpatim. This week's Parsha contains many mitzvahs across many different topics, and among them is the administration of justice and rules concerning the administration of justice and the necessity to be even-handed in a procedure, legal action, not to favor one party over another. Now we know from Parshas Kedoshim that there's a prohibition of favoring a wealthy person, a prominent person. The verse says, "Lo sedar pnei gadol." You should not, let's call it now, prefer. We're going to get into what the word lahader means. You shouldn't prefer a great person or a wealthy person when he's in a dispute with either an ordinary person or somebody who is less prominent and less wealthy. Here, in this week's Parsha, in Perek Chav Gimel, Pasuk Gimel, that's 23:3, we have a different prohibition, and one which requires a little bit of explanation. The verse says, "V'dal lo sehedar b'rivo." Poor person, you should not prefer in his dispute. So, what would that preference be? So Rashi says, "Lo tachlok lo kavod lizakoso badin." Don't give him honor to rule in his favor in the dispute. And the question presents itself. It's pretty natural that if somebody's wealthy, in our society at least, if somebody's wealthy or if somebody's prominent, to grant him, to cut him some slack, to grant him an extra measure of consideration in a dispute. If a person is poor, the poor usually aren't treated well. As a matter of fact, the prophets are filled with exhortations to judge a poor person favorably. The poor, the orphans, the widows, these are categories of people who are frequently taken advantage of, exploited, abused. And why would the Torah need to tell us, don't give an extra measure of kavod to a poor person, of honor? Don't tilt the scales in his favor because of honor. Well, in fact, the Aramaic translation of Onkelos, Targum Onkelos, shifts the meaning of sehedar and to mean to rachim. Don't have mercy on a poor person in a courtroom. In other words, you're not talking about one party wins and nobody else suffers a consequence. When you're talking about justice, you're talking about two people who have a dispute over, presumably over money or something that could be translated into money, and neither the rich nor the poor person should be given a preference. The Torah says, tzedek tirdov. A person, everyone, society, a person must pursue righteousness with righteousness. We don't corrupt the din, the administration of justice for considerations other than what is true and what is false. And sometimes it's not easy to tell, but we don't give an extra preference because of an individual's status, whether he's wealthy or whether he is, in today's language, the oppressed. The oppressed, the oppressor, they are equal when they appear before the court. Now, why might one give preference to a poor person? Well, you might think, and there are a number of rationales. Rabbeinu Avraham ben HaRambam says, for example, quoting others, that frequently, if a person is exceedingly pious, he's, let's call him an ascetic. He rejects the pleasures of this world. And so to him, money doesn't have the same significance as it does to others. Physical indulgences don't have the same significance. And so, generally speaking, a person like that tends to be poorer than others who embrace the world and need to make money in order to fund their lifestyle. So one might see a person like that and hold him in higher regard because of his spiritual accomplishments. And the Torah says, nothing doing. When it comes to din, when it comes to justice, we follow the truth. Others suggest that the motivation behind this prohibition is one might be inclined to say, look, kind of an opportunity to redistribute wealth. The wealthy person, if he loses this case, it's not going to affect him. If the poor person wins the case, it might well change his lifestyle, or at least relieve him of the stress of poverty, which is real and it's legitimate and it's a real concern. The Torah says, you take care of that business outside of the courtroom. Outside of the courtroom, we are obligated to support the poor. We are obligated to give charity. We are obligated to give tzedakah. We are prohibited from ignoring people in need. But the place to give a hand to the poor person is not in the courtroom. You might think, well, it's more bakovidik, it's more honorable for a poor person to be able to say, I won in a dispute, this money is rightfully mine, rather than giving him a handout because he doesn't have. In fact, Reb Shomshon or Hirsch is emphatic that one is obligated to support the poor outside of the halls of justice. Inside the halls of justice, there's only one consideration, and that is what is true and what is false, what is tzedek and what is not, what is righteousness and what is not. And we must achieve the righteous ends through righteous means, which is implicit in the Torah's exhortation of elsewhere, of tzedek tirdof, which is pursue righteousness through righteousness. Property rights can be complicated, and adjudicating them can be messy. And there are many factors, and the social factors are not legitimate. There are many factors that are legitimate, and they all have to do with property rights. We have many pages, volumes of the Talmud that are devoted to the fine details of claims, resolution of claims, property rights, who owns what. And in fact, there's a prohibition for a Yisrael, for a Jew, to pursue claims against another Jew in a civil court of law, as opposed to a beis din, as opposed to a rabbinic court, which applies din Torah, which applies the law of the Torah to the dispute. If a person goes to secular courts, he can be sanctioned by a beis din. Now, there's limited enforcement possibilities for a beis din, but nevertheless, it is not only inappropriate, it's prohibited, and the Rambam says it's a chilul Hashem, it's profaning God's name to appear in a secular court to resolve disputes between two Jews, because the implication is that the Jewish law doesn't have what it takes to resolve disputes, and that's the farthest thing from the truth. And at the end of the day, there should be, not saying that there is, but there should be less manipulation of the system and the process in a beis din than there might be in a secular court. In a beis din, the dayanim, the judges, are urged to be mindful of all of the relevant facts, but not to be dissuaded or otherwise derailed from their pursuit of justice through procedural shenanigans. It happens in secular court. It happens, or at least the attempt is made, in rabbinic court as well. And ultimately, the goal is everyone is equal before the law, and the law must be applied with integrity to everyone, whether the factors could be excessive compassion, excessive identification with a friend, excessive preference of someone who has a great reputation or who could personally benefit the judges. All that goes out the window. And at the bottom line is that in a Jewish court of law, the only thing that matters is truth and justice, and then the settling of social imbalances takes place outside of the courtroom, not inside of the courtroom. Have a good chance.